Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today, we have another great guest. As our ongoing subscribers know, often on this podcast, I'll be sharing ideas, insights, and best practices for building professional relationships and helping you excel at business networking. Occasionally, however, I will be interviewing subject matter experts, authors, speakers, thought leaders, social scientists, people who have experience in these matters. They're going to share their knowledge and help us build our relationships, as well as understand why we do the things we do. Today's guest is David Schreiner-Kahn. I get that right, David? Was it close enough?
You sure did, Frank. No, you got it right on.
All right. You never know. But after 28 years of being a highly skilled employee, David was told that he was no longer needed, that his job was over, and he faced that immediate trauma and fear that a lot of people do. But he knew in his heart of hearts that his next step involved working for himself, because he would just have more control over his destiny. That was back in 2006. And today, David is a thriving community builder. He's a podcaster. He's a speaker. He helps high achieving professionals who've had a late career job loss build their consulting or coaching business so they can do what they love and get paid for it and get paid what they're worth. Welcome to the program, David.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thanks for inviting me to be on.
Well, and the one thing I omitted, but we'll certainly touch on is you've got a couple podcasts. One is Going Solo. The other one was Smashing the Plateau, and I'll let you delve into those. But you also have a short little book called 49 Tips to Smash Your Plateau. Relationships and networking has got to be a big part of what you work with your clients on, I would imagine. So
it's a huge part. And actually, you and I met relatively recently, and I'm already a big fan of what you do. You've cracked the networking code in lots of ways, and you teach other people how to build relationships, which is really critical in life and business, everything we do. It's all about not only who you know, but who knows you. That's really at the heart of relationship building. And yes, it's really critical. And for our audience, which is consultants, when I ask consultants, where does your best business come from? The answer is always the same: referrals. It's always who knows them and who believes they can do a good job solving somebody else's problem.
Yeah. I guess my question, and you don't get into in your bio what this highly skilled position was, but did you struggle with that? 2006. Okay, I know I want to do something. How do I do it?
Well, the longer answer is, but I won't give the whole long answer. The longer answer is this is something I would say have grappled with my whole life. The point when I really struggled with it the most was much earlier in my career. This was actually back in 1983, when I, actually 82, 83, I transitioned from being an engineer. I was a chemical engineer, worked for kind of a mid-sized consulting engineering company. And I transitioned from that to work in the not-for-profit sector. And then I was in the not-for-profit sector for 23 years. And then I started a consulting business. So in the transition between engineering and nonprofit, I did a lot of soul searching, and also did some personal development, which was really groundbreaking and kind of guided all my decision making from then on. And actually, the fundamentals of what I do now in our community and with our clients is really based on some really very basic principles that I learned almost 40 years ago, which is, what is it you really love to do? What is it you're most competent at doing? Who do you want to serve? What problems do they have that you think you can solve? What problems do they want solved, have the capacity to pay you to solve, and they're interested in paying you to solve them? And you put all those things together, and that actually can be a great business. But you've got to put all the pieces together. And the reality is, whether you make a living as an employee or as somebody independent, whether you call yourself a consultant, contractor, coach, business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, whether you're the CEO of you or you're getting paid as an employee, where you're still, in my opinion, the CEO of you, because who else is going to look out for you?
Right.
You still have to weave all those principles into the equation. Otherwise, I think it's a recipe for frustration.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great. It's not a 3x3 matrix, but it's some sort of complicated matrix that you're putting together there, where all these things, where all these constraints kind of meet, right? And the critical piece there, it's easy to know what you love, what you want to do. It's finding the people that want to hire you to do the thing that you love. That's the challenge. That's the networking piece. That's what drives a lot of people back to corporate America, or maybe not even just corporate America. The plumber who decides he wants to go on his own and then says, well, I'm going to go back working for somebody else because I don't like to sell. I see that a lot. Ran into a construction company a couple of weeks ago. We're going to go work for somebody. It's easier.
Yeah, but we're all social creatures. We've certainly experienced the lack of our ability to be social in the last year and a half.
Right.
And I think, I'm not going to say 100% of the people the world over feel it, but certainly the vast majority feel the constraints that we've been under. And so if you have any social muscle in your body, the ability to interact with other people around some kind of shared interest is not that hard. And reality is, marketing and selling is really about connecting with other people around a shared interest. And you'll discover when you start connecting with people and having conversations with people around shared interest, some of those conversations will build strong relationships. Some of those conversations will let both parties in the conversation understand where there might be a potential exchange of value. One person has a need and the other person has a solution. That's really all this is. That's what networking is. That's what relationship building is. And honestly, if you look at marketing and selling in a way that is, kind of honest and beneficial and comes from a place of service, it doesn't have to feel uncomfortable.
No, I think that's a great lesson. I worked in a large firm and left and went into private practice. And when I worked in the large firm, go out, meet with your clients, sell projects, go, they said, go sell, right? And you don't know what that means. You just you kind of have to assume what it means. And left to your own devices with no other sort of background, what you think selling is not the right thing. And I struggled. I was one of those people. I didn't struggle for long, but I struggled and was deathly afraid that it wasn't going to work out. And I just didn't have what it takes to be self-employed. That was 25 years ago, and it took me 3 months to really kind of figure out, okay, but I did figure it out. To what extent do you run into problems with people who, I guess, struggle with that epiphany that it's really about doing something we're very good at? We're kind to our neighbors. We look out for our neighbors, and just looking at our clients or prospective clients as neighbors, if you will, air quotes. To what extent do you run into problems with that? Or is that the biggest problem?
I run into this problem all the time, because we live in a culture where we're constantly, there's a barrage coming at us of information that is telling us that there are breakthrough achievements that are possible, and that we should want these breakthrough achievements, and we should strive to achieve them. And we're given examples of, so like in the consulting world, well, so-and-so has a $1 million plus business as a solopreneur consultant. And all he did was A, B, and C to get there. And when you start digging deeper with these things, what you discover is that I've yet to come across a quote unquote breakthrough that didn't involve hundreds or maybe thousands of tiny steps and pivots, along with some kind of support, a team, peers, mentors. These things, breakthroughs don't happen in a vacuum. Like you look at Thomas Edison, who's credited with being sort of the father of the electric light bulb, and we know that he tested thousands of light bulbs before he got one that could come to market. Now think about what it took to be able to go through testing thousands of light bulbs. That's not a simple process. So that the big lesson I think I take away from the struggle that most of us have with trying to quote unquote achieve success or achieve a breakthrough is that what it takes is focus, discipline, and perseverance, and some structure and some some support. And one of the things that I've learned especially from podcasting, because I've interviewed hundreds of people about this topic, and you have as well, so you've probably seen the same thing, which is that success doesn't, the kind of success that many of us strive to achieve typically doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time. So you need patience. You need to be persistent and keep at it. Like, you and I have both produced lots of podcast episodes. Did you produce your first 100 episodes in a day? I didn't.
No.
Yeah. It took a lot of work to do it. Took a lot of work. It took it takes a system. It takes a process. Neither one of us has huge teams to produce these things, but it still takes a team. We don't do it alone. We had to learn how to do it. So the same thing, like in anything in business and in life, these things don't happen overnight.
Now, how do you coach people to build up what I'll call that perseverance muscle? Because that's, people go from having a job, right, where the paycheck just drops in the account, to, okay, now you need to try and make this thing happen. And oh, by the way, it's not going to happen this month. You're going to take some steps forward and you're going to take some steps back. And one might be larger than the other.
So one of the first questions I ask is, what's your financial runway? There are some people that leave a job and they don't actually have to bring in income in order to maintain their lifestyle. There are people like that. Yeah. For various reasons, but they want to work, right? That's sort of one extreme. The other extreme is, if I don't keep putting the same amount of money in my bank account every month, I can't continue my current lifestyle at all. Now, next question I ask is, assuming that you do need some income to support your lifestyle, is, okay, if you're not able to meet your first I would say, okay, so what are your financial targets and by when? Let's actually map them out. Like, how much do you need each month for the next, let's say, 2 years? Once we've identified what the number is, what are you going to do if you don't meet that target? And I'll say, what's the worst thing that can happen? And if that worst thing actually happens, what are you going to do? Right. So if you've kind of worked that through and you know what your plan is, if the worst thing happens, most people do better than the worst thing. So they have a plan for the worst thing. They do somewhere that, they'll do better. So already they're ahead of the game. So like that takes the biggest fear kind of off the table because there's a plan. Second piece is, once you're clear about what the worst thing is that could happen, okay, what is it that you would really love to have happen? And we know what your financial needs are. With the thing that you would really love to have happen, how long do you think it might take for this to happen? Let's say you want to have a consulting business where you're making your money by doing what you were doing as an employee, but you have, let's say, 5 clients at a time, each paying you 20% of what you were earning. So you're going to replicate your compensation, and you're going to do it with 5 clients essentially instead of 1. Okay, so how long do you think it's going to take? What do you think it's going to take to get that first client? How long is it going to take? Let's map out the steps. And you kind of work backwards. So you figure out, okay, well, what's the most important thing for me to do this week to help me get that first client? And then let's have another conversation again a week from today, see what you tried, see what worked, see what didn't work. And then let's decide on some pivots to your plan for the next week. And that kind of breaks it down so that it's manageable. Because when you break it down into what can you do, like what's the one thing you can do this week? So for example, with consultants, as we talked about earlier, most business will come from referrals. So, okay, who do you know? Who do you think can be most influential in referring the kind of business that you want? And how can you get a one-on-one conversation with those people? And it may be that there's a list of, it may only be 10 people, right? So what can you do to have some kind of communication with those 10 people within a week?
Right.
So you're talking about in a 5-day work week, having 2 bits of outreach per day. Mm-hmm. That's not so hard.
No, not at all.
Right.
Really.
It could be 2 phone calls. It could be 2 text messages. It could be 2 emails. It's not going to take you a lot of time and energy to do that. You may not connect with all 10, but if these are people who already know you well, chances are at least 1 is going to respond within a week. That's manageable.
Do you have some sort of accountability process when you're working with them to, I don't want to say make sure people do this. I don't know. I mean,
You're right. You can't make people do anything.
Right.
They can't even make themselves. But yeah, there is an accountability process. It's really simple. If you tell yourself you're going to do X by a certain amount of time, you may or may not do it. If you tell another person that you're going to do it, it increases the likelihood that you'll do it. Yeah. If you tell a group of people that you're going to do it and you have to face them again a week from now and then report on how you did, you're going to be even more likely to do it. It's human nature. If you write it down and you share it with those people, it increases the odds even more. So it's not rocket science. It's not complicated, but it works. So yeah, accountability does help us to do things.
So when you're working,
especially when we're uncomfortable about doing these things.
Oh yeah. When I tell the story all the time, I committed to running a marathon, signed up, everything, told all sorts of people I was going to run a marathon. June 16th, 2007, going to run a marathon. Threw out my back 6 weeks before the marathon. Couldn't do anything for a month. I ran that marathon. It wasn't pretty, but
but you did it.
But I did it for that exact reason. So when you're working with your clients, I guess you have them, write something up and, put it in envelopes or email it out and coach them to do those sorts of things. Okay.
Yeah, no, we have a very simple, action plan format that kind of runs through these things, and they write down what they want to accomplish, and they write down what they need to do each week, and they share it. And the ones that actually write it down and share it do much better than the ones that don't. And which is why I think, especially for those that go solo from a company to consultant or coach, being in a community of like-minded people is really important, because you will all help one another, and you'll especially if it's a community of people where the culture is a safe space to share where you're challenged and to be helpful to one another, it can be very powerful. I know you see it with networking groups, the same thing. It's like, networking groups are really designed to help one another with business development, and people will talk about their challenges in business development, and others in the group will help them. That's one of the powerful things about a networking group that's geared around a specific purpose. Our community is really geared on just creating business success in general, which has a number of different elements. Business development is one, but there are lots of others too.
To what extent do you have people digging into what I'll call dormant ties, people that have lost contact with old employers, things like that? Is that part of the equation, or that just depends on the individual and what they feel is going to be their path of success?
What do you mean by going back to dormant ties?
Oh, there's that boss that you liked 3 jobs ago, or there was a coworker that got hired away and is somewhere else now, reaching out to them.
So like unearthing an old contact?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That happens actually quite frequently. It's unexpected gold, but yeah, it happens. And when people think about where connections can be helpful and mutually beneficial, and how relationships can be helpful, they start thinking about, oh yeah, there was a person that I had this conversation on this topic in this place, and I haven't spoken with this person in a while, but I saw they made a post on LinkedIn recently. I guess I could reach out to them.
No, I think it's a powerful tactic. Let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about, we've been kind of talking about your business, but types of people you're looking for. I guess quickly talk about your 2 podcasts, and then let's morph into your business and the types of people you're looking for who might spot or know somebody that would be a good client for you.
Sure. So the podcasts are Smashing the Plateau, which we launched in 2014. So we have at this point 600 some odd episodes out there, all available for free if anybody wants to listen. Many, many hours of conversations. And I've had some where, people will share things on the podcast that they haven't shared elsewhere, which is, I'm, really touched when somebody decides to do that. Because we talk about topics that are usually quite important to people. Second show is Going Solo, which we launched in 2019. And they're both about helping solopreneur service providers, consultants, coaches, those who make a living on an independent basis based on their skills and experiences. Smashing the Plateau is about growing an existing business, and Going Solo is about that initial stage of transition from employee to consultant, which is, even if you're staying in the same discipline, there are a lot of new skills you need. And all of a sudden you're isolated and can be quite overwhelmed. So it can be a very challenging time. So both of those podcasts are out there. And what was the other question?
Yeah, I know I threw a lot at you. I apologize. Well, let me put in your bio, you talk about you're helping people who've had late career job losses. And so I would assume, based on that, and you can let you interject, but I have kind of a little question with that. You're helping people who have been downsized, corporate execs, mid-level managers, I'm guessing. Are there ever people coming to you just saying, you know what, I'm not happy? I got a job.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. I mean,
okay.
I would say we have a unique sort of unique marketing niche, focusing on those that have been that become a consultant or coach. They need to want to have a consulting business because entrepreneurship is way harder than being an employee. They really need to want to do it. But the trigger is that, they've been pushed out. And actually, that was my story. It was a path I wanted to take. But the trigger was somebody else decided on the timing. And, you know, when you are downsized, some employers do it in a way where they are respectful of you as an individual, and they try to make it, I mean, it's never pain-free. It's a very traumatic process no matter what. It, you know, even though I knew it was coming because it was politics, didn't involve me personally. There was skill overlap with a new CEO. And when I was told, you know, that my direct supervisor tried to be as kind as possible in the process, which I was really grateful for. And, you know, we maintained a good relationship afterwards, but still being out of a job is still hard. And we're judged. I think in many cases, the unemployed professional ends up becoming, I would say, the kind of blamed for the circumstances by others. Yeah. That's how we get judged, which is really, it's not quite the way anyway. So in terms of like who we help, I personally have a lot of understanding for the scenario. I've built a successful business and I'm way happier than I was as an employee, but I really wanted to be more in control. So if you do want to be more in control, there are things you can do that are going to help you on that trajectory and on that path to do it faster, better, bring up your compensation more quickly. You can actually make more money as a consultant than you might be able to as an employee. But there are things you need to do to be able to get there. And I have clients that are making more money now than they did when they were employees. But yeah, being unhappy is one of the main ingredients. And so, yeah, we also work with people that they're frustrated in their job. They're thinking about, I'd really like to do something better, but the paycheck is very, you know, it's very enticing. How do I set myself up to do better? I mean, one of the things, you know, as an example, you can do if you're an employee and you're thinking about leaving is if you don't have a line of credit, get one. Because you can get one way more easily when you have a paycheck than when you don't have a paycheck.
That's good. That's a great tip.
You'll need
yeah.
You may not need the financial runway, but if you ever need it, it's nice to know that it's there. And if you do need it and you haven't applied for it and you're less than 2 years into your business, you're going to have a tough time getting it, no matter what your credit score is.
No, that's a great tip. I remember back in the day, just before I left, somebody said you ought to buy a house, and I did. And I didn't really, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about the credit markets. I know a lot more now, but it was just such a smart move, you know.
Exactly, because that home ownership in America gives you a leg up on those people that don't have it. It's really sad, but that's the reality of our system.
Yeah. People listening, how could they get a hold of you? Would be
they can go to smashingtheplateau.com. That's where both podcasts are. There's a contact form. If you want to learn about our community, it's smashingtheplateau.com/community. There may be a pop-up that shows up on our website that'll direct you there as well. You can call us. We actually have a live person who's US based who answers the phone, 212-731-0770. Phone is an underutilized resource.
Yeah. Can they call just with questions, I assume? I mean, it's
I'd be happy to speak to people. Yeah. Of course, I'd be happy to schedule time to speak with anybody that has questions. Look, all the decisions that are associated with our discussion today are not easy decisions. They're not things you want to make quickly. I'm happy to talk to people. They want to check out, you know, some of the things we're doing. You know, it may be the beginning of a dialogue that will be ongoing. These things don't get resolved overnight.
Great. David, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.